Hey folks, it's Brother Casey coming to you for this week's Pep Talk. Thank you so much for joining me. We are beginning to see, if we're using sports analogies here, the end of the race, the finish line. And so as we have moved through the summer, what a summer it's been, I hope you've enjoyed being in the writings of Paul. This week, we're going to cover the last 4 chapters of First Timothy, and then we're going to get into what is a powerful, powerful letter in 2 Timothy. So let me break down 1 Timothy 3 through 6, and then we'll introduce 2 Timothy as well. All right, here we go. So as we look in 1 Timothy 3 through 6, we said last time that this is an organizational manual for the church, which doesn't sound very exciting to us usually, but what we're going to find here is this. The church has a purpose, and in order for the purpose of the church to be fulfilled, then the church has to be organized in the way that God designed it to be organized. And so here's what we dive into. When we get into 1 Timothy chapter 3, we're going to be looking at who's who in the church. And so this is a central chapter, literally, but also theologically. It's the central chapter of 1 Timothy. What we find is this. Paul is going to address Timothy, and he's going to say, look for overseers, men who have this calling in their life to oversee or to be the pastor, the shepherd of the church. Then he's going to talk about deacons, and he's going to say these deacons are going to be men who are going to come around and they're going to support the overseer. They're going to serve the church. And then he also gives a word to members. It says, members, you play a role as well. There's something you're supposed to do. So as you read through 1 Timothy 3, what you're going to find here is this, is that it's all because of Jesus. It's all because of Jesus. Jesus produces godly character in men who will be overseers, pastors. Jesus produces godly character in deacons and in deacons' wives as well. Jesus produces godly character within members. And that's important because the godly character in members and godly character in deacons and godly character in overseers, this is Jesus being proclaimed to the world. Now, moving on, chapter 4, we're going to address, Paul talks about there are some who are going to desert the faith. They're going to leave the faith. And why do they do that? And then he's also going to talk about there are some who will be faithful to the cause, faithful Christians who will continue to pursue Christ and represent Christ. So how do we do that? Chapter 5, he's going to talk about the church family. So he talks about how we relate to one another. He addresses how we should relate to what he calls older men, how we should relate to younger men, how we relate to older women, how we relate to younger women, how we relate to widows. He spends a lot of time describing the ministry to widows, what qualifies someone to be a widow, and how does the church minister to these widows. He talks about family and how the family is supposed to relate to one another. He talks about elders. He talks about our pastors and how we're supposed to treat our pastors. So chapter 5 is a powerful chapter that's all about how we treat each other within the church. Then he wraps up this first letter to Timothy, chapter 6, and he tells Timothy some personal things about how to fight the good fight. He talks to him about submission. He talks to him about doctrine and teaching and the importance of teaching sound doctrine, doctrine that makes sense for living. And then he addresses also, kind of wraps up the letter in a unique way, but he talks about riches in the world, how those who have riches, have wealth, how they should respond to that wealth, and how they should use that wealth. So it's a great letter about organizing the church, how we treat one another, how we represent Christ in the world. Now, let's dive in. At the end of this week, we will get into 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy is understood to be Paul's last letter. So when we were in 1 Timothy, we were talking about Paul possibly had been in prison in Rome, and then he was released and spending some time doing work in Macedonia. Now in 2 Timothy, Paul, we understand, is in his second Roman imprisonment. That's important because his second Roman imprisonment under Nero ends in the execution of Paul. So Paul, he will allude to in 2 Timothy, he knows that he's about to lose his physical life. And so there's a unique tone to 2 Timothy. All right, you're going to pick up on that. This is, we understand, Paul writing, but he's specifically writing from prison. And this is more personal. Now, he will use the plural at times in 2 Timothy, so we understand that Paul is writing first and foremost to Timothy. A lot of personal elements But when he uses the plural, he is also addressing those Christians that are in Ephesus with Timothy, where Timothy's pastoring. Paul is writing, and here's the main idea. He's telling this young minister, Timothy, he said, be loyal. You hear that? Just be loyal. Be loyal, and he addresses a couple of things. Be loyal to Christ. Times will get difficult. Trials will come. What do? Endure in the ministry. Be loyal to Christ. Let your relationship with Christ be central regardless of your circumstances. He also says be loyal to the gospel. Keep preaching the gospel. Keep teaching the gospel. Keep teaching that sound doctrine. Keep opposing false teachers. Don't give up on standing for what is true and what is right and what makes sense for Christian living. Keep loyal to the gospel. And then also you're going to hear some of this. Paul writes and he says, Timothy, be loyal to me. And he invites Timothy, he says, come to me here in Rome. I want to see you. I long to see you. So he's actually inviting Timothy to come and to have one last face-to-face meeting with him before Paul is executed. Powerful letter in 2 Timothy. Hey, that's 1 Timothy 3 through 6. That's 2 Timothy. You'll get into chapter 1 at the end of the week. It's going to be a great week if you continue in God's Word. The Word promises, God promises that He will bless us as we continue His Word. Thank you so much for being part of Fit with Friends, and I hope you enjoyed this pep talk, and then really I hope you enjoyed this week in God's Word. God bless.